morning, didn't we? Did it make you feel like you wanted to just stay in bed and just kind of wrap those blankets right around you? It sure did me. And I'm sure when you left for Sabbath school this morning that you grabbed that nice warm coat and wrapped it around you. Well, the warmth continues here in Sabbath school this morning. Look at all the blankets that we have here. That's because our theme this morning is God's blanket room. Welcome to God's blanket room this morning. And so this morning, my theme has been inspired by a short story that I'd like to share with you right now. After a long climb up and down the traditional Mount Sinai, our group returned to St. Catherine's Monastery only to find the entrance door closed. We were exhausted and wanted to rest on our bunks. But the notice on the door stated that there would be no access until the monks had completed their prayers. It was late in the evening when we finally entered the monastery, and by now the weather was very cold. The monks had supplied us with only one blanket each, and in the unheated stone building, we soon began to feel extremely cold. As the group leader, I entreated the bishop for more blankets, but he stubbornly refused, insisting that this was a monastery, and it was good for us to suffer for the Lord. In the middle of the night, one of my group members from tropical New Guinea began to suffer with hypothermia. We shared clothing and blankets with him, but none of us could sleep because of the intense cold. Eventually, I woke the bishop again and spoke with righteous indignation that he could let us, the guests here, die of the cold. Reluctantly, he agreed to open the blanket room to give us one extra blanket for the man from New Guinea. When we gained access to the room, which was full of warm woolen blankets, we were all suddenly from New Guinea and wrapped ourselves in 2 or 3 blankets each. The next morning, the monastery was surrounded by snow, the first on the Sinai Peninsula for more than 10 years. Have you felt spiritually cold, perhaps in the past or even now presently? Have you worried that you may soon die spiritually from lack of warmth in your Christian experience? Does access to God seem closed? Through Jesus' sacrifice, the key to heaven and God's blanket room has been provided. Imagine yourself now taking that golden key in your hand that unlocks God's blanket room and step inside. You are entitled to heaven's blankets not because you're from New Guinea, but because you're a child of God. Wrap yourself in the many blankets God has for you. Wrap yourself in the spiritual warmth and security of His blankets. What kind of blankets do we find in God's blanket room? Sharon Ferguson, Ralph Tyree, Elizabeth Wright, and Chris Wetmore and myself will share with you about some of the blankets you will find in God's blanket room.
Happy Sabbath. I want to read from Philippians 4:19, but my God shall supply all your need according to His riches and glory by Jesus Christ. I'm going to tell you a brief personal experience in my life, how God supplied my need. My first husband and I got a divorce in 1979, and my daughter was 8 years old. I did have biblical grounds for divorce, but for many years here I was single and I was busy working, raising my daughter, and maintaining a close relationship with God. But eventually I thought about getting married again, and it was a dilemma because I dated men that had great qualities, but the one thing that they didn't have was that they didn't have a deep commitment to God, and I could always see that. But the man I dated before I met Pastor Charles came into my life, and he was everything I thought I was looking for in a husband. I adored his mom, and I still do. I still have a relationship with her. And he went to church with me, and I thought, oh, this is wonderful. I was just overjoyed. But after a few months, he no longer went to church with me. I think it was just a facade. And he ended up watching TV on Sunday mornings, and he was always interested in NASCAR. and he didn't go to church with me anymore. But for years I prayed and begged God to tell me if he was the right person for me. I just didn't want to face the truth. Finally, God answered my prayer with a personal, life-threatening lesson, and I think this is what I needed to be able to finally get the answer from him.